Hello beautiful people, this video is about what is development debt in biotech and pharma. I've spoken quite a lot about technical debt in software development, and there is a very strong correlation between that and development debt in biotech and pharma. Biotech and pharma have their own version of what software developers would call technical debt. And if it's not addressed, it can slow drug discovery, inflate costs, and even put patients at risk. Hi, I'm Jennifer Kenny. I'm the author of the award-winning book 100% Capacity and the best-selling author of The Innovation Mindset. I help leaders and teams make smarter decisions in complex technical and scientific environments. Today we're unpacking the biotech and pharma equivalent of technical debt and why addressing development debt is essential for innovation, compliance, and patient safety. I do a considerable amount of work with software development organizations who are developing long-term projects, highly complex technical projects. And I also do work with biotech and pharma organizations who are developing long-term drugs and who are also delivering enormous value to patients. Over the years, what I've seen is in terms of how human beings deal with it and in terms of the practices we use, our practices for dealing with technical debt on the software side and our practices for dealing with development debt on the biotech and pharma side are actually very similar. There are metaphors that are valuable for both. There are practices that are valuable for both. There are approaches that are valuable for both. I think that each industry has a lot to learn from each other. So I wanted to just do this video to give you an understanding of why when I talk about software tech debt, you're going to start seeing a lot of relevance for you if you're in biotech and pharma to the impact of development debt. So what do we mean by debt in drug discovery? Just like in software development, it's the deferred cost of making suboptimal choices for speed and convenience and paying a higher price later. So when we talk about software technical debt, we talk about strategic intentional debt, we talk about accidental debt, and we talk about maintenance or bit rot debt. Those three still apply to the drug development process. We can make strategic decisions around a particular project that we're working on that will give us trade-offs down the road or will allow us to be able to get the drug to market faster or will allow us to be able to get the documentation completed more readily. And we know that we are incurring costs that we're going to have to go back and clean up over time if we're to meet all of our regulatory requirements. That can be a strategic decision for a project. Accidental debt is this creep that happens over the duration of a project where people will hand off things to each other that are somewhat incomplete, that the understanding isn't totally shared, and what we do is we build debt into the project over time that before anything can be released, before it's going to meet all of its compliance requirements and deadlines, we have to go back and clean all of those things up. The maintenance work is the maintenance work of skipping some of the documentation because we want to move on to the next phase really quickly, of not doing some of the compliance requirements at a particular phase in the project, planning that we'll do them at a later phase. So we're going to be making all of those decisions throughout a project. If we start thinking of them in terms of development debt and we really start managing it as debt, then we're going to build our awareness into the project and we're going to over time really increase the quality of the work that we can do and I believe ultimately the speed to market for some of the drugs that we are looking to bring to patients. In biotech and pharma, debt isn't just about code. It isn't just about code and software either. It's also about data, it's about processes, and it's about infrastructure. Let's talk about data-related debt. Poor data quality and poor integrity applies as much in the biotech and pharma space as it does in the software development space where we're using data for simulation or we're using real-world data for testing. Inaccurate, incomplete, or inconsistent experimental, clinical, and real-world data can lead to flawed analysis and bad decisions. So our data quality is really core to the impact that we're going to have on the long-term development debt of a project. Software is a really great analogy for this, because if we build software on false assumptions, we're going to have long-term debt associated with it. The same thing applies in biotech and pharma. If we're putting faulty data into the system, we need to be aware of the long-term domino effect that that's going to have on the success of the project. Data silos and lack of interoperability. If we have separate silos working independently of each other and they are producing really valuable data for themselves, but they're not necessarily sharing that data in a way that is valuable to some of the other teams in the organization, we're going to end up with a gradual erosion, not just of the data quality, the usability of the data, and the value of the data. We're going to lose the value of a lot of the available insights. It's a similar thing in a software development environment. If we don't have the interconnectedness and we don't manage that between the different teams that are leading development, we're going to end up building a Frankenstein monster. And from a software development standpoint, that's relatively easy to see. From a drug development standpoint, that's a little bit harder to see, because it shows up more in terms of missed opportunities to understand and integrate available data. The other data-related debt is outdated data and metadata. So in fast-moving areas like genomics, old data quickly loses relevance. If we're not paying attention to the time cycles of our data and we don't have an understanding of sort of the expiry date of our data, what we're missing an opportunity to actually be able to manage that in a proactive way that allows us to manage our development debt and understand the impact that that can have. In the software space, that looks like maintaining old, out-of-date code that is going to take us longer to maintain, and it's going to be harder for us to find people who are willing to work on that data. Insufficient data curation and management. In the drug development space, this is a huge issue, because we can end up with massive data sets, and without proper curation, those data sets can actually become bottlenecks for analysis and decision making. Software development teams spend a lot of time managing and making sure that their data is valuable and up to date for what it is that they need, or they spend a lot of time looking for the right data sets. In the drug development space, there's a similar issue in terms of our ability to be able to make sure that we are on top of our data sets and we are making sure that those are available to the right people at the right time. Process and infrastructure related debt is something that is a little bit ephemeral in terms of we have very specific and very tight processes for certain parts of the drug discovery process, but we don't necessarily have such regulated ones for the sharing of information and the sharing of data across silos within a drug development process. So when we look at process and infrastructure related debt, I think it's important to look at standardized workflows and practices. And for that, I don't mean the regulated ones. I mean the ones that actually have to do with us sharing information, sharing data, sharing understanding, sharing analysis. What I've seen is that silos within development organizations can lead to a weakness in our ability to be able to produce repeatable results, and our weakness in our ability to be able to infer certain insights that might allow us to be able to leapfrog some of the thinking that we're doing in our project. That shared understanding, that shared language, that shared appreciation of who the data is valuable for is an absolutely integral part of our infrastructure related debt if we don't manage it well. There's an enormous cost to this debt, the same way there's an enormous cost to the debt in the software development space. And it is increased cost and delays, reduced innovation and competitiveness because we're getting unreproducible results and we are also getting lack of innovation. The scariest thing about the cost of this debt is not just the impact on the particular project, but the potential impact on our end patients. Patient safety is something that I have absolutely been delighted to see as something that is hugely consistent among every single person that I come across in the healthcare space. People gravitate toward that space because they want to help other people, because they want to be able to add value for patients, because they want to be able to heal them and support them in their healing. And if we can make sure that we understand the relationship between development debt and patient safety, then I think that we will be tapping into the innate drive that brings a lot of people into the healthcare space. If we can contextualize development debt in the context of risk around patient safety, not as a stick that we beat people over the head with, but as something that people are inherently there for and really care about, then I think we have an opportunity to be able to start talking about development debt in a way that we have not necessarily done up to now. Regulatory and reputational risk is hugely important in the biotech and pharma space, much more than it is so in the software development space. Non-compliance due to lack of data integrity and data security and data quality is something that is just completely unacceptable in the drug development space. That is an incredibly valuable lever for thinking about how we think of development debt in all other parts of our organization. Do we use the regulatory environment as a way of beating people over the head in terms of making sure that they manage their development debt effectively, or do we use it as a way of furthering the conversation, leveraging the conversation, and increasing some of our practices associated with it? The upside of managing the development debt is absolutely enormous. Patient safety being absolutely top of the list, regulatory compliance being absolutely critical. But also what it does is it creates an environment where people are able to tap into the commitment that they have to bring really fantastic drugs to market, to be able to heal others and provide an incredible service to them. It maximizes the efficiency of drug discovery. It accelerates the time to market. It ensures data integrity and reproducibility. And ultimately, it delivers safe, effective therapies faster, which is why every single person who I've met in this space, that is what they're passionate about. The parallel between development debt in the biotech and pharma space and between tech debt in the software development space is an area for me that is incredibly valuable because it allows us to be able to learn from each other. It allows us to be able to move ourselves out of just our particular industry and to look at what practices look like in other industries that we can import into our own. I think the regulatory work in the pharma and biotech space is something that we can absolutely learn from in the software development space, and the general practices around tech debt and tech debt management and tech debt standards and reporting are something that we can absolutely learn from in the software development space. If this area is of interest to you, and I hope it is, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, let me know whether or not this video has been valuable for you. There's another video that I think you will find useful in this space, which is what is technical debt and how is it measured? Think of that also if you're in the biotech and pharma space as what is development debt and how is it managed? And let's begin the conversation, an interdisciplinary conversation where we can begin to think about how we learn from each other and how we solve some of these problems together. That would be truly innovative. As you go about this process, I wish you the very best of luck. Take care.